Good evening to all of you. I feel really delighted as a president to inaugurate this webinar, third webinar as a part of BEST series, that is Beat Epilepsy, Stay Informed, as a part of celebrations of our Golden Jubilee celebration of Indian Epilepsy Association. As mentioned by Dr. Satish Chandra already, two webinars have been successfully conducted by Ludhiana chapter, first epilepsy and drug complaints, and then subsequently by Mumbai chapter. And now currently the epilepsy and driving has been taken up by the Bangalore chapter. And as all of you know, we had planned every month on a third Sunday, but due to technical reason, it was supposed to be held 2 weeks ago. Now we have to, in the last minute, there was a technical hitch. That's why we shifted to 2 days. This one, as all of you know, epilepsy and driving, people, it could be a personal issue and a safety issue, and people are scared that because of epilepsy, driving may be difficult because of uncertain nature of incident of epilepsy, or could be the side effects of AEDs. And this epilepsy and driving, there are at least in India, as of now, current Indian law, as of now, a person with epilepsy cannot drive, irrespective of the type of control and irrespective of the duration of the epilepsy. I think across the countries, there are many countries have formed the rules, I think, on which this today's webinar is going to be there. Like some countries, based on depending upon the seizure-free period, 6 months to 2 years, there is a permission to drive the vehicles. And in India, of course, as all of you know, after Indian Epilepsy Association initially fought legally for Marriage Act, subsequently combinedly Indian Epilepsy Association and Indian Epilepsy Society also had made an effort to change the Motor Vehicle Act of India, and subsequent to the states, it is on the process. I think they have submitted the letter to the transport minister and other things to make a change on that directions. I think from the time of Dr. Saxena time, still the efforts are going on. Currently, I think in that what was planned, what was advocated was at least 3 years seizure-free period and certification. They should be able to do it, give the license to drive it. Because what is happening is, the moment in our Indian law, the moment you say there is an epilepsy, yes, he will not be allowed. That's why we see in our routine day-to-day practice, many people are not declaring that they are epilepsy, and jolly well they are driving both heavy vehicles, public vehicles. Sometimes it may causing the accidents also rarely. But if you think rate of accidents compare people with epilepsy driving with the accident is currently little remote compared to the people who have a careless driving and alcoholic people driving and presently cell phone users driving. Compared to them, I think it's very less. It is a high time we should make changes in our current in Motor Vehicle Act, and to have a better facility for driving, at least for person with epilepsy to have a driving of a personal vehicle. In this way, I think Bangalore chapter is going to have a panel discussion with Dr. Satish Chandra and Dr. Subhash and Dr. H.V. Srinivas, who is the senior consultant, as a moderator. They have invited two eminent people in the field, like Professor S.V. Jogarao from the law department and Mr. Shivaraj P. Patil, who is concerned with the transport. I think their help, also their views also is definitely required. I really thank the team of Indian Epilepsy Association, Bangalore chapter, under the leadership of Dr. N.R. Suresh, Dr. Chandrasekhar, Dr. Malabhaskar, and Dr. Janardhan to have a nice charted out a nice program. I once again welcome all the members of IES and other members of delegates for this webinar, and I inaugurate this third series on epilepsy and driving. Over to Dr. H.V. Srinivas.
Thank you, Professor Vengamma, for setting that context, and as a president of Indian Epilepsy Association. Now, I, on behalf of the Central Chapter, request the president of Bangalore Chapter, Dr. N.R. Suresh, to take over and start the program.
Thank you, sir. I am Dr. N.R. Suresh, President, Indian Epilepsy Association, Bangalore Chapter. On behalf of the Bangalore Chapter, it gives me great pleasure to extend warm greetings and wishes and welcome to all of you for today's webinar. All the office bearers of the Indian Epilepsy Association, all the office bearers of the Indian Epilepsy Association, that is local chapters across India, then also from my own chapter, office bearers and the members, and also extend warm welcome to today's moderator, Dr. H.V. Srinivas, and the panel of expert panelists what we have here, and all the important, another important participants from all over India across different walks of life who have been logged on to this webinar series, and also organizing committee members, team members for this webinar. And my special thanks to the Indian Epilepsy Association National Chapter for giving Bangalore Chapter an opportunity to host this third webinar, that is Beat Epilepsy, Stay Informed, the series webinar on epilepsy and driving. We are happy to celebrate this, conduct this particular month, because October 18th happened to be the 93rd birth anniversary of one of the doyens in the field of epilepsy, yes, and he is also known as the father of epileptology in India. You guessed it right, Dr. K.S. Mani. And we are really happy that we are celebrating having this webinar on this occasion. And he is one of the persons who had fought relentlessly for the cause of epilepsy to ensure the rights and rights of the people with epilepsy. Always he fought for the epilepsy, persons with epilepsy, to improve the quality of life. And I would like to, in fact, he is perhaps the only Indian who had been bestowed with the 3 international awards related to epilepsy, namely the Ambassador for Epilepsy Award, Social Accomplishment Award, and Lifetime Achievement Award for the cause of epilepsy by the International Bureau of Epilepsy, as well as International League of Epilepsy. And we'll be very much happy to dedicate this webinar as a tribute to the memory of our great leader in epilepsy, that is Dr. K.S. Mani. And just a few words before, for the benefit of the participants. What is this special about epilepsy and driving? I think you have all been introduced to that by our president very well. And the Indian Epilepsy Association has been fighting hard for getting changes in the laws related to epilepsy. So that the changes that are made in the laws reflect the advances made in the epilepsy, so that the benefits of the realities of the scientific reality of epilepsy care is passed on to the epilepsy patients with epilepsy, and also their rights are ensured. So to answer this, you have a lot of experts from the medical field, the legal field, and also the road transport division, and a panel of experts. You please feel free to ask all your questions in the chat box. And now I invite Mr. Chandrasekhar, our Honorary Secretary, Bangalore Chapter, to introduce the panel of experts so that we can carry on with the webinar. Thank you. Once again, wishing you and welcoming you and thanking you for sparing your valuable time to be with us during this evening. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Ellargu namaskara.
Yeah.
I have great privilege to introduce panelists and members of IEA. Dr. H.V. Srinivas, moderator and senior member and a well-wisher of IEA. Dr. Satish Chandra, President-elect, Central Office and senior member of IEA. That is chapter and as well as central. And Dr. G.T. Subhash, former President of IEA and former editor of IEA Bangalore Chapter. Dr. P.V. Rai, former President of the GC member of IEA. Professor Joga Rao, member of IEA Bangalore Chapter advocate, and health care consultant, legal excel of attorneys, National Law School of India, Bangalore. Welcome, sir. And Sri Shivraj B. Patil, Additional Commissioner for Transport, retired, Bangalore. IEA Bangalore Chapter Managing Committee members, Dr. Enna Suresh, President, Dr. Malabhaskar Rao, President-elect, myself as Chandrasekhar as a Secretary, and Professor K.C. Janardhan, Honorary Treasurer. I'm all introducing. I think everybody knows it, sir. I'll go over to moderator, Dr. H.V. Srinivas. Yes, sir. Done, sir.
Yes.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, just hold.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, good evening to all of you. And we have been already introduced about the subject. We have my colleague panelists, Dr. Subhash and Dr. Satish Chandra and Dr. Rai. I just want to mention Dr. Rai was a neurologist practicing in the European countries, Germany and Switzerland for almost 4 decades. So we'll have a first-hand information about epilepsy and driving from him, what is happening in the other countries. We also have 2 guest speakers here today, one Professor Joga Rao and then Shivraj Patil, who has been already introduced. Now, we are also fortunate that we are hosting this on the occasion of 93rd birthday celebration of Dr. Mani, who has been the pioneer and the founder member 50 years ago, which he started, and he has been the fountainhead of all the social aspects of epilepsy. Now, coming to the topic, we have chosen the topic epilepsy and driving. And because it is rarely discussed in public and even rarely discussed amongst ourselves, it requires a little bit of introduction. There are 2 components, epilepsy and driving. Now, the epilepsy part is almost 5,000 years old. The disease is 5,000 years old. But unfortunately, the stigma, the misunderstandings and the myths attached to the epilepsy is still continuing, not only in the rural areas, but even in the urban areas, even in the people who are so-called educated. Now, this stigma attached to epilepsy is denying and causing the problems to the person with epilepsy. Just for the information of the general public, we don't call the person with epilepsy as epileptic anymore. We call the person with epilepsy not as epileptic. So this denial starts right from the time of when they are in childhood. They are denied school admission, college admission. They are denied proper jobs, marriage, sports, social activities. I mean, every walk of life, there is a discrimination and denial because of the myths which is continuing from the past several centuries. And the other part of but what is happening is, why the myths are continuing is, we are not able to educate the public as well as we want to. For example, in the last 4 to 5 decades, the medical science has advanced rapidly, so much so from an era where we thought epilepsy is not treatable to an era where epilepsy was considered to be a lifetime treatment, to the present era where epilepsy can be treated for 2 to 5 years without seizures. So we have come to that situation where a seizure-free period of 2 years is sufficient to take away the anti-epileptic drugs. And the good news is 75% of people with epilepsy can be very well controlled with the seizures. Now, our focus today is on that 75% of people with epilepsy who are seizure-free and yet denied a driving license. Now, we come to the second part, that is epilepsy is over, now driving. To drive a vehicle, whether it is a 4-wheeler or 2-wheeler, 2-wheeler is in abundance in our country. We need a driving license. So to get a driving license, you have to fill a form. And when you go there, it says that, do you suffer from epilepsy? The moment you say yes, you are no more considered for giving a driving license. So again, to re-emphasize, 75% of people, that means suppose we have about 10 million people with epilepsy in our country, 10 million people. So 75% is 7.5 million people who should get a driving license or denied a driving license. Why is this happening? Because the Central Motor Vehicle Act is 1989. So at that time, whatever was the understanding, on that basis, it has been denied. Now, like we have advanced in the medical treatment of epilepsy, so also I think we have to modify the Central Vehicle Act so that this 75% people can be given the driving license. Now, to give you a international scenario of what is happening, you can see here, there is a permanent ban on automobile driving in countries including India. There are countries which require only 12 months seizure-free interval. That means they don't have seizure for 12 months. They are still continuing anti-epileptic drug, but they are given the driving license. There are countries which require 24 months seizure-free period. And if you look at the bottom line, USA, it is in some states, it is as short as 3 months. In some states, it may be 18 months. In the West, it is extremely important for people to drive their vehicles. And that is why we have a lot of scientific data in the Western countries where they have found people with epilepsy can be issued driving license with certain caveats. So that is the main thing which is happening. If you look at the European Union, in 2004 itself, they have given driving license for people who are seizure free for 6 months to 12 months. If there is a change of medication and seizure, it is only 3 months. But what about the heavy vehicles, people who drive buses and trucks? They should have 5 years seizure-free period without anti-epileptic drug. The previous one for personal vehicle, they can still be taking anti-epileptic drugs, but if they are seizure-free, they are permitted to drive the vehicle and given a driving license. But when it comes to driving public vehicles, heavy goods vehicles and buses, then there must be 5 years seizure-free period for first seizure and 10 years seizure-free period for those who had epilepsy. Mind you, in the Western countries, driving without license is a highly punishable thing. So they're all damn scared to drive without a driving license. And so the driving license is issued based on the medical conditions. Now the last part, what happens? Suppose I see a bus driver who has got epilepsy, who comes to me for my treatment. What is my role? Should I inform the concerned authorities? Should I, suppose he is a driver of a personal vehicle to a person, a manager or somebody, should I inform the owner of the vehicle saying that your driver has got epilepsy? Now this mandatory reporting is a very controversial thing. In some countries, they have said yes. In some countries, they say no. But it still exists mandatory thing in parts of USA. But the problem is the moment you inform, the moment a driver knows that if I go to a doctor, I will be denied my job, they will conceive that they have seizures. So the doctor-patient relationship gets affected. So it is a controversial thing whether you should inform the concerned authorities or not. So now we start the panel discussion. And I'll start with Dr. Rai. Dr. Rai, whenever we raise the topic of person with epilepsy should get a driving license, the immediate reaction, both from the transport authorities and from the public, is how can you, doctor, how can a person with epilepsy drive the vehicle? He will meet with an accident. So what do you think is the cause for this apprehension? Dr. Rai? Dr. Rai, you are not connected.
I think we can come back to. Hello. Is he able to? Dr.
Yeah,
Rai?
now,
Dr. Rai? Are you able to hear? Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Rai. You're not audible.
He has to unmute, sir.
Hello.
So go on to the next question, sir, and then come back.
Let's close the door, please. Door closed.
Single flag, sir.
Again,
Are you able to unmute, Dr. Rai?
Sir, he is unmuted only.
he's on mute.
Okay, shall
Yes.
we proceed then?
I think we should go on to the next question, sir, and come back again later.
Okay. I think the usual concern is that how can you give driving license to a person with epilepsy? Now this is the statistical data from the West. Epilepsy and risk of accidents due to seizure while driving. See, the important point is 75% of persons with epilepsy who are seizure free for 2 years, we are talking about them to get a driving license. That means they didn't have any seizure for the last 2 years. They are taking the anti-epileptic drugs. The chance of getting a seizure at the wheel while driving in a person who is seizure free for 2 years is infinitesimally small. The immediate reaction for public or the officials is that a person with epilepsy, the moment he holds the wheel, he will get an attack. That is the reason the fear is there. So it is interesting to note that road traffic accident due to seizure while driving is extremely rare, 0.2%, while drunken driving is 31%. These are all statistics from the West because they are more concerned about issuing the driving license to a person with epilepsy. In another study, it is as low as 0.02%. And the lifetime risk of road traffic accident does not differ between those with and without epilepsy. What is important is just because a person is under treatment for epilepsy doesn't mean the accident has happened due to a seizure while at the wheel. It is even a person with epilepsy can get drunk, can have reckless driving and meet with an accident. That is the reason the concept that a person with epilepsy may have a seizure is entirely wrong. Now you can see that in the recent newspaper in Bangalore, you can see 1 in 4 riders who died accidents were helmetless. And overspeeding is always a killer. Now these are the common causes and one should not go with the idea that person with epilepsy has accident is always due to the seizure itself. I hope I have made it clear. Now Satish Chandra, we know that all seizures are not epilepsy. You see, seizure is a symptom. Seizure is like fever. Fever can be due to malaria, typhoid, tuberculosis. Whereas epilepsy is a definite diagnosis. That means fever due to malaria. So similarly, seizure due to epilepsy. So can you elaborate the causes of seizure, but not epilepsy? Because the public think that the moment they see a seizure, oh, he has got epilepsy. Will you please let us know?
Thank you, sir. It is a very important question. Every seizure is not epilepsy. That is what we need to understand. A first seizure, the seizure could be due to various causes. But when we say epilepsy, it has to be recurrent. Why do I say that? In a case of a seizure, can we take an example? The first seizure. Any patient will come with the first seizure. We don't call that as epilepsy. The reason for that is it is not recurrent. And the first seizure could be due to various causes, unprovoked causes or provoked causes. When we say provoked, What does it mean? Just now, Dr. H.V. Srinivas was telling fever could be due to malaria, fever could be due to typhoid. Similarly, a seizure can occur due to various causes such as low sodium, which is the commonest cause in the elderly, or it could be due to low potassium, low sugar, or it could be due to high blood sugar. In a diabetic patient, very high blood sugar can also produce a seizure, or it could be due to an immediate head injury, which can cause a seizure. Like that, or low calcium can also produce a seizure. These are all called provoked seizure, acute symptomatic one. There are also provoked seizure could be due to the remote symptomatic. There are remote symptomatic could be in a form of a tapeworm infestation. An infestation, which is called cysticercosis, can produce seizure, 1 or 2 seizures also. That is also possible. Then we have other causes like tuberculosis could also produce that. Sometimes malignancy also produce. These are called provoked seizures. And there are unprovoked seizures, which are due to genetic causes. Sometimes it can produce. So when we have a first seizure, the seizure may not be due to epilepsy. All epilepsies are due to seizure, but all not seizures are due to epilepsy. And the most important is when a seizure occurs because of all these causes, the treatment of that cause, for example, the sugar is low, you treat the sugar to increase the sugar content, that will become normal. If a person has a high sugar, you bring down the sugar or correct the sodium level. These or correct the calcium level. These are the causes which can produce definitely a seizure, but these are not epilepsy. So all seizures are not due to epilepsy. There are many causes for that, like all fever are not due to any specific cause. It could be due to many causes. That is why we say all seizures are not epilepsy. Thank you, sir.
I'm back.
That's a very good point that seizure is not equivalent to epilepsy. Now, Dr. Subhash, now while issuing a driving license, we have to differentiate a seizure from epilepsy. Now, who should certify whether the person had a seizure but not epilepsy, or a person had a seizure due to epilepsy? Dr. Subhash.
Thank you, sir. It has to be a neurologist because epilepsy is a serious event in the life of an individual. The accurate diagnosis is very essential. And many times we have seen scientific evidence as well as ourselves have seen 40 to 50% of the time when epilepsy was diagnosed by the non-neurologist, the wrong diagnosis and wrong treatment was seen. And it implies that expertise and experience in the field of epilepsy is very important. So it has to be a neurologist who should initially make a diagnosis of epilepsy. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank
I'm
you.
back. Dr. Srinivas, I'm back.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. We just finished your question and answer. We'll
It's
come
okay.
back to you a little later if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Mr. Patil, now when we go to fill up the form, there is a self-declaration as to, where is my slide? It's gone. Hello?
Manasi,
Your slide is not there, sir.
Manasi?
I can hear you, sir. You continue,
You can see the
please.
slide now?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
sir.
Yeah,
Yes.
when we had to go to the RTO to fill up the form to get a driving license, there is a self-declaration as to physical fitness. The first line says, do you suffer from epilepsy or from sudden attacks of loss of consciousness or giddiness from any other cause? Now, if he says yes, he has to give some more details. Now we have heard that every seizure is not epilepsy, and there are many patients with epilepsy who are medically fit to drive. Whom should he give the details? It is written there whom should to give details, and then there's a medical certificate to be given by a recognized MBBS doctor. Do you think an MBBS doctor recognized by the government can give a certificate saying that it is not seizure, it is not epilepsy, but seizure like that? What is your opinion, Mr. Patil?
Sir, in the earlier act, it was there, any registered medical practitioner was allowed to give certificates, but it has been changed and state government has issued a notification saying that only the medical officer of the government hospitals can only give the certificates in this, are their opinion. So now it has been little bit streamlined towards the medical officers rather than any MBBS doctor.
But even the medical officer is MBBS doctor only.
Yeah, but he is from the government side.
Yeah,
That
but
is
the
what the state government wanted. Only the medical officers of the primary health centers or any general hospital who are appointed by the government, they should give the certificate, a medical certificate under Rule 6 to the
But the
license seeker.
But the question is, you see, the line says, do you suffer from epilepsy? We just now heard there are many people who get a seizures due to various causes, low blood glucose and all that. So it is not necessarily epilepsy. How does MBBS doctor able to differentiate? You heard just now, Subhash said that only a neurologist can differentiate. And then the first line also says, sudden attacks of loss of consciousness. Sudden attacks of loss of consciousness is commonly due to syncope, or in the common terminology, fainting. Now, fainting is not equivalent to epilepsy. Now, again, how can a MBBS doctor differentiate that from there? And then the third part of the first line says episodes of giddiness. Oh, giddiness is such a common symptom. If you sit in the OPD, many people come and say, doctor, I feel giddy, I feel giddy. So if unfortunately the person who is filling up the form says yes for giddiness, now what type of giddiness? Is it related to epilepsy? So you understand the problem. So it is not easy for a MBBS doctor who is not equipped to differentiate all these things and then say that it is epilepsy or not epilepsy. So can you clarify about this point?
So basically, we have to understand why this first question itself is on epilepsy. For any driver, for driving this thing, job, the main the part of the body which functions is the brain, and particularly he has to be so conscious. It is a multiple action it involves in driving a vehicle. It's a very responsible job, and the primary and most important organ which has to work is brain. Some disease or some disability with the brain to control the vehicle, like epilepsy or a giddiness or a seizure, definitely it is going to have a very serious and disastrous effect. And thereby, I think whatever the medical certificate and even declaration by the candidate, which we want to seek the information before consider the application for driving license, is aptly designed, sir. This is most important. And now I think whatever you people are drawing all these conclusions, we'll have to have a way to go ahead with the amendments. By amendment to the act and also by incorporating any such inclusions, I think it is going to solve a little bit of problem for the people who are not having seizure for the last 12 months, who are declared by the medical practitioner that he is out of danger. So these things will have to be proved and put it to the union government, and there also the boards are constituted and conclusions will be drawn, or the remarks will be drawn. Lot of discussion will take place like they made. Earlier, the authorities, the transport authorities were insisting 2 eye vision is a must, left and right eye vision. But later on, the amendment was so that even monocular eye person should also be given a license because he has got both field vision of 612 and also lateral vision of 120-degree vision. And these are all the things later on they have incorporated.
So
and
you feel
brought
that,
the confidence for the public safety.
So you feel that there is a scope to
Amend.
amend the law. You feel like that?
No, this is the process. That is what I wanted to put it. If you are telling that it is so safe and this is going to substantiate the safety aspects, then you have a way to go ahead, sir, because the rights of the persons with disability, it also gives certain powers to access the mobility for them. Disabilities have got rights under the Indian statutes to access their mobility facility also.
Okay,
So I think we have to go in that angle.
I think now let me request Jogara. What would be the legal opinion on this issue? You see, because the seizures, unconsciousness, giddiness, everything is jumbled up in one line. So we feel that a MBBS doctor may not be capable of differentiating this. So do you think that there is a legal hold to make the alterations in the application form? Jogara?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Srinivas. To begin with, I'm happy that Mr. Shivaraj Patil is one of our panelists. It is necessary a person with that experience speaks from the government. Now let me explain. At a fundamental level, in any respect, speaking for our country and maybe to some extent other countries as well, law always takes a backseat when it comes to advancements either in technology or medical science or any other field. Unless we take proactive steps to ensure the law does not reflect reality. That's the lesson, number one. Number two, you mentioned about stigma and ostracization, discrimination, denial. I think the core source for this is nothing but awareness about the reality. Not only the public, even public functionaries require that knowledge. For instance, Dr. Subhash, Dr. Satish Chandra mentioned who is competent to diagnose whether a person is suffering from epilepsy or not. If the law were to say a registered medical practitioner or to take a leaf from what Dr. Mr. Shivaraj Patil said, a medical officer, even then, I don't think that reflects the situation as of now. In my opinion, the need for legal reform is ongoing and an inevitable necessity. Number two.
Very good.
Number three, the most important. I think all of us, we need to put our heads together to weigh the interests. What is the issue? Say, for example, the declaration of what you have mentioned as a matter of rule, as a matter of law, it only says self-declaration. Say, for instance, I am suffering from epilepsy, but I don't declare. Whether the rules provide that all the people applying for DL, they must be subjected to a routine checkup about whether they are suffering from epilepsy or not? No, which means it goes by my declaration. And I know what happens if I declare, therefore I don't declare. If that were to be the situation, the kind of harm, the kind of situation that may permeate must be compared with enabling a situation where do not deny in totality. When there is a medical advancement, when there is information about a particular way in which the interest can be protected. I think to that effect, the legal reform is necessary. And I want to tell all of us, I think we need to first make a case for Karnataka government and see whether the rule can be amended in a manner which reflects the reality. That's what I think.
I think, Mr. Jogara, thank you very much for what you have said. The moment a person says that I have epilepsy, it is denied. And so they don't declare. And you and I, every one of us know that people with epilepsy are driving not only personal vehicles, even buses and trucks and everything. But the point you said, Karnataka government, if I remember, the Central Motor Vehicle Act is done by the central government and only we have to follow it. Can we modify on our own, Shivaraj Patil?
No, we cannot take up that work, sir.
Yeah.
The legal reforms will have to be taken at the union platform,
Yes.
not at the state platform.
We have to address it to the union government only.
Definitely, sir. All representation, whatever it is to be made to the union government.
Yeah.
So far, some relief was given to the people with vision disability. Some relief is given for the people with, foot and leg problems, disability.
Yeah, so we'll
So
have
that has come from the
address
mass.
to the union government. Yeah, good.
Yes.
Now, Dr. Satish Chandra, a person is referred to you by an employer saying that whether this person has seizure due to epilepsy or not. How do you confirm it?
Sir, that is a very important question. How do you make a diagnosis of epilepsy? Epilepsy is always diagnosed by the history and the history alone, from a first-hand information, which is a very, very important. As the police says, the FIR is lodged, the first information report. Here we require a first-hand information from a person who has witnessed the attack. If we get that history and we analyze and reconstruct, we will be able to say whether this patient had epilepsy or not. But the most important evidence for that, which we all look for, is by the mobile phone. If you have a mobile phone recording of an attack, which is there, one can view that and we can see that attack and then confirm it. Dr. Subhash has already mentioned that the diagnosis of epilepsy is extremely important and it should be done by the neurologist. The reason for that is there are many conditions which mimics like epilepsy. They are called mimickers. So that needs to be differentiated. They are not epilepsy and they should not be labeled as epilepsy. And that is what is very, very important. Apart from this, the EEG or imaging, whatever we ask for, are only indirect evidences. And there is no direct evidence by which one can make a diagnosis of epilepsy. Diagnosis is always by the history and confirmed by a first-hand witness from that site or first information given by the patient's relative or the eyewitness account, which is extremely important.
Now a practical point, Dr. Rai. Suppose a patient is having epilepsy and he has been given a driving license. Now he meets with an accident. Do you think it is due to seizure at the wheel or due to any other cause? What is your experience in the Western countries where you have been working as an epileptologist and a neurologist?
Thank you. I'm sorry I lost contact now back. Over the last 40 years that I was practicing in Germany and Switzerland, I have seen several accidents in people with epilepsy. But the minority of accidents, small number of accidents were due to epileptic seizures. The other causes were such matters like heart attack during driving, sudden bleeding in the brain, other kinds of strokes, and even simpler causes like telephoning in the highways or a serious argument between partners. As you mentioned, or as the others mentioned, sometimes it's difficult to find out what the cause was. But a neurologist, according to my experience and opinion, is always able to make out whether the accident was due to an epileptic seizure by taking proper history and by referring to police protocol. It's important to find out why this accident happened so that we know in the interest of the person and the person and the general public. So there were rare cases where people had the so-called fake accident. Fake accident is when the person makes an accident, he suddenly changes the seats in the front seat, the passenger comes to the driver's seat and declares he or she had the accident to save legal punishment. Only such case is difficult. Otherwise, it's always possible to make out whether an epileptic attack was the reason for the accident.
So do you mean to say that a person with epilepsy, when he meets with an accident, they are always referred to a neurologist for clarification there in the Western country?
They are always invariably referred to neurologists because the transport department does not accept any other opinion other than by a neurologist. Medical insurance does not pay the patient unless it is certified by a neurologist.
That's good, very good. Now, Dr. Satish, how should the insurance company determine whether the accident is related to epilepsy or epilepsy is incidental? Because you know that in our country, the insurance companies, the third party, always try to deny the insurance amount, and they try to pick holes in the whatever is the case history. So how should we go about with the insurance regulators?
As you rightly said, sir, the insurance is always try to avoid giving the money, and rather than giving the insurance for the help of the patients. That is always the problem. So in such a situation, they try to find out why it should not be, and it is primarily due to the accident and primarily due to epilepsy rather than the accident itself. So what is important then situation is always we need to look at the situation, how the seizure has occurred or how the event has happened. Once the event has happened and the history is obtained from an eyewitness account, which I have already mentioned, one can reconstruct the story. But now it is very easy. Every road has got a CCTV, every house has got a CCTV, and there are mobile phones from an eyewitness account. So one can review the CCTV nearest there on the road or nearest in the house, and one can even look at how the accident has occurred. Is the accident is due to the seizure or epilepsy, or is it due to the accident first and then it has happened? So one can easily look at that, and that is what is very important for the police also to get the history from eyewitness account and also to look at the CCTV. Now, Kannadadalli ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ CCTV ರೋಡ್ ನಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ಬೋದು, CCTV ನಿಂದ ನೋಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೋದು ಇದು ಎಪಿಲೆಪ್ಸಿಯಿಂದ ಆಗಿದೆಯಾ ಅಥವಾ ಇದು ಆಕ್ಸಿಡೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಆಗಿರುವುದಾ ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೋದು. ನಮ್ಮ ಕನ್ನಡದ ಜನಗಳು ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅದರಿಂದ ನಾನು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹೊತ್ತು ಮಾತಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂತ ಅದನ್ನೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ CCTV ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಗೆಲ್ಲ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಎವ್ರಿ ರೋಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಗಾಟ್ ಇವಾಗ CCTV ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಅದನ್ನ ನೋಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ಅವರು ಅದನ್ನ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ತೆಗೆದುಕೊಂಡು ಡಯಾಗ್ನೋಸಿಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಸರ್.
Thank you. Now to continue this story, Mr. Jogarao, now
yes,
a person with epilepsy meets with an accident and the insurance company denies to pay the whatever compensation. How do we contest this in the court?
Before I come to this, I want to clarify something what I said in the context of Mr. Shivaraj Patu, what he mentioned. When I said the Karnataka government, I did not mean to say the amending power of the state in a union law. No, I am talking in terms of sensitizing the authorities at the helm so that they know what exactly is the disease and what are the various aspects. I want you to take note of it. After all, central law can only be amended by central government. There is no doubt about it.
Right.
Now, coming to
Can I add to this?
Yes, no, chairperson.
Yes, please.
I request chairpersons to allow me to
Yeah,
react to this, Mr. Jogarao's
sure. Please go ahead.
question. Sir, the union government has made the Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016. In that, the chapter 8, it envisages, it says the duties and responsibilities of the state governments to make the facilities for the disabled persons. So it is also clearly written there, somehow the access has to be made for the disabled people to access their mobility facility. You got the idea?
Yeah.
Now the provisions are there for the state government. State government has already started that commission for disability people, and the state government also accepted that responsibility of making access the disabled people for the mobility, for their mobility, like the adapted vehicles.
Mr. Shivraj Patil, can I interrupt? Epilepsy is not a disability as of now. So we will not discuss about the disability and then the benefits and all that.
Correct.
So we are now talking about epilepsy, which is not a disability. So Mr. Jogarao, can you please go ahead and see how we should contest in the court?
Yeah. When it comes to the rejection by the insurance company, my research has revealed that 2005, there is one Supreme Court judgment. The judgment is National Insurance Company Limited versus Swaran Singh, where the Supreme Court made it very clear the insurance company cannot negate the payment, claiming that the driver got or ineligible to get a license, maybe on account of either epilepsy or some other account, etc. What the insurance company has to prove is negligence or failure to take care while driving. That is the only thing that can be the ground for rejection. I think that is what we need to show, but not with regard to that the condition of the person.
Okay, okay. Now I think let us come to the practical realities, ground realities. Dr. Subhash, what is your advice for a person who has a single unprovoked seizure? Now I am talking about the practical points by a neurologist. We know there is no law permitting a person with epilepsy who is medically fit to drive, they cannot drive. But yet we keep seeing people with one seizure only, not yet epilepsy. We keep seeing people with epilepsy. What is the advice we give regarding driving? Because it's extremely important to know, forget about the legal implication. What is the advice we should give for a person who comes with a first seizure in life? He still has only one seizure. Dr. Subhash, you have to unmute.
Am I audible?
Yeah, now.
Yes, sir. Yes.
We are caught in between the rules and the patient. See, the first unprovoked seizure means all the secondary causes are ruled out. This we have got low risk and high risk. We have got around 40 types of epilepsy. Shuraj Patil was telling unconsciousness and motor disability. That is one type of seizure. So in patient with low risk or high risk, with this present law, I am forced to tell them not to go for driving. So if I were to be in other country, the low risk means neurologically normal, EEG was normal, no family history of seizure, and imaging is normal. Such patients, we will counsel them because you are going for a high risk job. So to take treatment, and the permission should be given after 6 months seizure-free interval. For those with high risk means there is some neurological deficit, then EEG is abnormal, then imaging is abnormal, family history is there. Such patients, we will start, it is considered as remote symptomatic epilepsy, and we will treat like epilepsy. And in other countries, they will allow him to drive 1 year after seizure-free interval. And about Shuraj Patil was telling about the government doctor. Government doctor in a hospital, PHC and other things, his exposure to epilepsy is very, very nil, almost nil. He cannot make, for example, there is permitted seizures is also there. In foreign countries, if a patient who is conscious and he is able to act, that means immediately he can, his motor activities are normal. Even if the seizure is there, 1 year after, they will permit him to drive. And in certain conditions, which is peculiar to seizures occurring in night, if it occurs only in the night, 1 year afterwards, they will allow the person to drive. These are all the problems which at the present situation, I will tell the patient and patient attendants about this problem. And that means you are what we are practicing, this 6 months, 1 year, it is only on oral, but I will write it down on his medical record that these things are explained to the patient and patient's attendant to be safer, in the safer side.
That's true. So what I am talking to is what do we do in our clinical practice, not what Western countries are doing. Now that is what Subhash has said about the single unprovoked seizure. Now, Dr. Satish Chandra, a person has been diagnosed as epilepsy. He is taking anti-epileptic drugs. Now, what is the advice do you give to him regarding driving?
There
These are all
two-
personal advice. It's not a
Yes.
legal advice. It's personal advice.
Sir, here is a very important question. What we are talking about is a epilepsy person and driving for himself or herself. That is the first thing. That is the personal vehicle. Personal vehicle could be a two-wheeler or could be a four-wheeler, and the person has got a single seizure. You have already heard from Dr. Subhash. If it is a single seizure, a person can drive his own vehicle, according to my opinion also, after 3 to 6 months. 3 to 6 months later, they can start driving their own vehicle. There is no problem at all in these cases if a person has a single seizure. On the other hand, if a person has driving personal vehicle, that is, they are not the public vehicle driver. We need to differentiate here between two things. One is a public vehicle driver. There is already questions coming for a bus driver, a conductor, bus driver, or a truck driver. That I am not answering at this stage. I am answering a question regarding the personal vehicle. If there is a personal vehicle and a person is a known epilepsy patient on anti-epileptic drug, if the person is free from seizures for the last 1 year, I think I recommend for these patients, you can go back and drive a vehicle, but mind always the safety measures. What are the safety measures? Always I insist that if they're two-wheeler, please wear the helmet which is standardized and it is ISI recommended. And also for a person with a car, they must use a seat belts, which are extremely important, even though they are epilepsy or non-epilepsy, but all the more important if the patient has got epilepsy and on anti-epileptic drug. After 1 year of seizure freedom, if they are driving personal vehicle, they can drive. That is what I can answer regarding the personal vehicles.
Yeah, right. So I also do the same thing. A person with epilepsy driving his own vehicle. So 1 year seizure free period, but with two caveats. One is no late night driving. Another is lack of sleep and early morning. They want to go on a long drive. So get up at 4 a.m. and then start driving, because sleep deprivation is one of the risk factors for getting another seizure. So with these two conditions, no late night and no early morning driving, if they are seizure free for 1 year, they can drive. Now, that is our practical suggestions to them. Now, Dr. Subhash, we keep seeing patients with epilepsy who are bus drivers and truck drivers. Now, do you think that we should inform the KSRTC that so-and-so bus driver has got epilepsy, because he's endangering the lives of so many people, not only the people sitting in the bus, also people who are on the road? Do you think we should do that? Your opinion?
In heavy vehicle category, if he is appearing for the first time, saying that I am going for this job, I will definitely tell him not to join for the job. If he is already driving, the problem starts here. It is between the patient and the rigid rules. The patient, if he comes from the government authority, I will contact the person who is in charge of this driving and tell him to give alternate job for him and ask him not to drive. As in the Western countries, he should be seizure free for 10 years. And I will also request the family members, the problem of driving, not only for himself and getting into problem by meeting by unfortunate accidents to the others. So my sincere suggestion in my practice is to not to drive heavy vehicles for at least 10 years. That is reasonable. Now Western countries are also reviewing this to make it as 7 years. So because the heavy vehicle involves public transportation. If it is private, again I will ensure that he should not lose the job. I will request the concerned authorities to give him a job which is not harmful to the others.
The question is, would you inform the concerned authorities? Because when you,
honest and sincere and ethically, I should inform the concerned authorities.
The driver will come and assault you because he will lose his job. You must be prepared for that.
That is the problem, sir. Because the rules are rigid. but patient doctor's relationship will be strained, but they will not assault. They will not consult me next time.
It will be very difficult because even though the company is ready to give him an alternate job, they want a driver's job because they get extra beta, overnight allowance and all that. Even if an alternate job is given, in my practice, I have seen that they want the same driver job. And they tell that if you inform the authorities, you see what will happen. You see, nowadays, anything and everything happens.
No. Usually KSRTC.
You are saying ethically you are right, but is it practical?
Like KSRTC, what I do is I will catch hold of the employees association. Employees association is strong and they will protect his salary. But if he wants more money, I can't help. But it is.
I would like to intervene here. I'm Dr. Manjari here. This is a real and present danger because this has happened with me. There was a bus driver from Haryana and he was transporting heavy vehicle. He was transporting people in the bus. And I told him that he cannot, because his seizures were coming and he was also taking alcohol and he also had a calcified cystic circle lesion. So I told him that it is not prudent of him to be driving and he should, I will give him a letter stating that he should be given a stationary job of supervision of bus routes or, timings, etc. And you will not believe it, in the next OPD, he came with an arm to my arms to the OPD. So he came with a country-made rifle to my OPD with his wife. And he said that, you just write the treatment and don't give me lectures on whether you will give me a letter. I threw your letter away in the dustbin and I'm still driving. And his wife understood the issue. But, this is a real and present danger for our safety. Fortunately, we have security guards in our OPD. And henceforth, I refused to see him because it was becoming difficult for me to manage him. But they do not like it. And I uniformly tell my patients that legally, anybody who's had a seizure in this country is not supposed to be driving. So if you're going to ask me that, am I going to allow you to drive? First of all, it's not within my purview. Second is, I cannot recommend an activity which is illegal as per law currently. So I tell them that legally there is no, you cannot be driving. And there are alternate modes of transport like, autos and buses, etc., metro, whatever. And kindly avoid driving. So, because I have to be on the side of the legal thing unless the law changes. So,
okay, Satish has something to tell. Satish.
Yeah. Sir, this situation happens very often, and then the people are referred. And when I was at NIMHANS, there are many times the KSRTC people used to refer to me. Then it becomes very simple. And when KSRTC themselves are asking us our opinion, we have a board which is always sent to the board, and the board takes the decision. In a government possibilities, it is very simple. The government drivers, government organization, we have always a medical board, and the medical board gives the certification based on the legal permission as well as the law of the land. And that is what they permit, and we can be on a safer side. On the other hand, in a private problem, there will be a problem, as Manjari was mentioning, and whether we need to inform, I think we need to counsel first what are the dangers of driving, especially the public vehicle, and make them understand what is it, what does it mean, and then try to see whether there is a support from the family, and then inform if it is feasible to the appointing authority, so that the public at large will be safe.
Satish, there is one question from GRK Sharma.
Yes.
Will making anti-epileptic drug issue linked to Aadhaar help in overcoming such issue?
I also read that question Sharma has said. Aadhaar card is used for many other purposes. Whether it enters our privacy is the question. I think the privacy, the law of privacy and Aadhaar card linking up to many of these things, I do not think the privacy permits it. I'm sure Jogarao will have his opinion.
Maybe now that some digital health records are going to be formed.
Yes.
So maybe in that, if there is automatically it will be known that the patient is on anti-epileptic drugs. Maybe we'll have to wait for that. Now the question to Patil sir is, now how do you think we should go forward to get a driving license for a person with epilepsy who is otherwise medically fit? Any ideas from your side how we should go about it? You have heard about all this so far.
Before I tell this idea, I would like to react to the first question, sir, the earlier question that prescription of anti-epilepsy drugs should be linked to the Aadhaar. Now our all Sarathi software in the state government, it is linked to the Aadhaar card. Any such information which is available in the Aadhaar portal, definitely it is going to draw to the licensing authority about this epilepsy information. And he has got a quasi-judicial power, and licensing authority will take the automatic action over those people who have not reflected this condition in their declaration as well as in the medical certificate. I think there is already a mechanism which is already built. This is a good idea, sir, whatever it is given by the viewers. Sir, now I will come to the idea. Srinivasan, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Please
Yeah.
go ahead. How do you think we should
What
move
I would like to
forward?
draw the attention of this, enlightened body, the union government, after making that Disabilities Act, it has given certain powers to the state again to form the commission. There is a commission in the state for which we will have to represent that person with single seizure and not occurring for another 12 months. We can have that license access to mobility. So it can be represented to the commission. Commission again will write to the government. Again, there is a process, there is a mechanism, and it goes to union and the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways under section 2, rule 212 of Central Motor Vehicle Rules. The directions will come to the state and licensing authorities will start weaving about this, whether to give it or not ultimately under these guidelines. So this is the way we have to approach it, sir.
So if I understand correctly, Shivraj Patel,
Sensitization has to take place. Platforms will have to be built up, and some of the efforts will have to be moved from one step to another step.
so if I understand you correctly, if a person with epilepsy gets a letter from a neurologist from say NIMHANS or All India Institute saying that this person is medically fit to drive even though he has got epilepsy, that letter can be given to state level. For example, in Bangalore, can we approach a state level commission?
That is there is a way, sir, to approach, but licensing authorities will not consider.
Then what is the purpose of giving an application? I mean,
Then whatever the declaration it is been depicted here, whatever the medical certificate which has been designed by the experts, will have to have inclusion of such type of request, sir.
which is not there at the moment.
At the
At the moment, it is not there.
It is not there.
No, sir. No.
Okay.
Sir, may I add something?
Yeah.
So whatever new thing, it has to go to the legislation.
Yes, it has to be amended, sir.
And it has to be amended. But in United States, the federal government has got given powers to the state, so they can take appropriate decision regarding issue of the driving license.
But here it is a central government only.
Central government, and it will take long time, as we have seen.
Yes.
So here, whether legally we can route alternate path. This is the question.
Now, Dr. Rai, you have practiced as a neurologist and epileptologist for 4 decades. Suppose a person who has a driving license develops a seizure or develops a seizure due to epilepsy. Now, how do you recommend regarding the driving and the driving license? Dr. Rai? Hello?
Sir, he is muted, sir.
Do you hear me now?
Yes,
Now I
yes.
can hear you.
Yes.
Yes,
So,
okay.
I will repeat
See,
the question. A person
Yeah, I
who
know,
is-
I've heard.
Yeah.
See, the regulations for driving for people with epilepsy are very liberal in Switzerland and in European Union, which has 27 countries with open borders. See, the people can drive if they have one provoked seizure after 3 months, provided provocation can be prevented. In case of unprovoked seizure, where there is some risk of further seizures, they have to give up driving license for 6 months and then re-evaluation. In case of epilepsy, when there is a diagnosis and more than 2 seizures, they have to give up driving license for 1 year, re-evaluation, and they are allowed to drive. There is, in these 27 European countries and 4 countries added that too with the bilateral agreement, Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. They have a directive from their central government stating that a medical specialist, that is invariably a neurologist, it is for him or her mandatory to report a person with epilepsy, irrespective of accidents or not, to the transport department in regular intervals. This report is very valid document which gives the diagnosis of epilepsy, last seizure the person had, the medication prescribed to him, and the next consultation he should have. And in this medical certificate, it makes it very clear, a triangular connection between the transport department and the neurologist and the person with epilepsy. It is all based on trust, but it is a legal document. This is for the purpose of driving a vehicle for personal reasons, a car or a motorbike or a motorized two-wheeler. In case of heavy vehicles, lorries, bus, taxis, the rules are very stringent in view of public safety. These people cannot drive once they have one seizure, provoked or unprovoked. They have to give up driving for 5 years at least. And they have to be seizure-free for 5 years without medication. That means the risk of seizures in this person is not higher than the risk of general population. And these countries generally advise that these people change their professions after first seizure. And this compulsory social insurance in these countries help these persons, give them their salary, 80% of the salary for first 2 years, and later help them to find another job. So this is working well there. Particularly all the European countries have recognized the right of a person with epilepsy to drive under these medico-legal regulations. This is working for the past 60 years and it with some revisions, and it has been going on well. It's doing good thing for the persons with epilepsy and also taking care of the public safety. So this cannot be changed there, and it is working well, keeping the social dignity of the person and necessity for driving, as well as taking care of full safety.
Thank you, Dr. Rai, for all that information. Ground
But Sanjeev Thomas has got something to say. Sanjeev Thomas.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving me this opportunity. I think I agree with all the discussions which were going on. As a practical suggestion, my suggestion is that first we should take personal transport, own driving, self-driving, and dealing it with some commercial driving or professional employment kind related driving. Because if we take both together.
Hello?
I think network problems.
Sanjeev.
Yeah, network problem. I think he's not able to continue that.
Yeah, Manjari, in the meantime, Manjari wants to say something.
Thank you, sir. Yes, we must make efforts to differentiate public from personal. But driving is not a unilateral, performance. It is also dependent on the road conditions and the traffic conditions. One cannot compare the traffic in Switzerland and Europe to say Delhi or even my hometown of Kanpur, where at red light everybody is moving around and at green they are stopped at various places. So as well as the traffic, is very chaotic and irregular. It's not just humans and vehicles on the road. There are non-human participants on the road. We are well aware of non-human participants on the road. We are also aware of a huge problem of drunken driving. In the West, you are not drunken driving. If you have a party at home and you drink alcohol, your partner will drive, or you will not drink. You will not use your personal vehicle if you drink. Whereas in India, drunken driving is very, very rampant, and more often than not, everybody will agree with me that accidents any one of us get into, is not due to our fault. It is due to some parallel fault, either of non-human performers on the road or of chaotic traffic, which is there, or maybe even a simple pothole. We have come across so many accidents where a bus has gone over people just because there was a pothole and a lady fell into it. This has happened in Bangalore itself. So really, there are so many more variables in our country which we cannot compare. We cannot compare.
Manjari, can I interrupt, please? Those are the things which is beyond the scope of today's discussion, because we cannot do the potholes and all to be filled up and all that. Sorry, I think we are running late. I will come back to the last two questions. Mr. Jogarao, you have known that Indian Epilepsy Association for 12 years under the leadership of Dr. Mani has struggled and went to the court and got the marriage law amended so that epilepsy is no more a cause for divorce. Do you think that there is a scope for us to follow that principle?
Personally, I'm not very sure epilepsy as a ground for divorce can be a precedent for this context. There are two reasons. Number one, marriage and divorce is more in a private construct, private relationship. But when it comes to driving, I think it has a different connotation altogether. The second reason is the kind of work that has been done, led by Dr. Mani and various other people. I think that approach can be a precedent. For instance, in the year 2005, the Ministry of Transport did take some positive steps insofar as driving license is concerned for people with epilepsy. But unfortunately, when they have referred the kind of thing to Ministry of Health, then other departments, they raised some red flag, and that's how the entire process got stuck. I think we needed to take it from there, and we need to consider. I personally feel both executive need to be approached for a legislative reform, and at the appropriate time, particularly of late, the kind of social reform judgments rendered by Honorable Supreme Court since 2016 onwards, they are landmark judgments. I think there is a scope for a public interest litigation as well.
Yes.
Particularly, I emphasize that Article 14, right to equality, because the present law reflects writ large arbitrariness. There is no rationality at all. The law, being the present context, does more harm than good. Therefore, I think in the light of data and information, I think we should be able to approach Honorable Supreme Court and convince. But having said, approaches from both the ends, I think are required. That's what I think.
Yeah, in 2005, when I was the president of EA, we had put an application to the Ministry of Surface Transport and went on reminding. And then at last, Dr. Saxena, they managed to get it forwarded to the Ministry of Health. And they have given some recommendations with the expert group. After that, nothing is moving. So we need to have the lobbying, what is called as lobbying at the Delhi level. So I think Manjari will come into the picture now for lobbying, because you treat all VIPs in All India Institute. So you must be able to do something to move the files to the appropriate authority. But apart from that, you think that we'll wait for some time for that? You think that public interest litigation will be of some help to speed up the process. You know that Marriage Act got speeded up only when we put a public interest litigation.
Correct.
Until then, they were not responding at all. So
Correct.
should we do that also, public interest litigation?
In my opinion,
I'm talking about 75% of people with epilepsy who are well controlled. We are not talking about professional drivers. We are not talking about the 25% who are continue to get seizures.
I think that is the reason why appropriate data, Supreme Court looks forward to data. That data requires to be generated, scientifically justified.
In India, we don't have that data. We have to depend on the Western countries' data.
Yes, I'm sure rest of the countries we will, but whatever the data which we can be able to generate, I think Supreme Court really looks forward to that. That's the approach. That's what I think.
So last question is, in addition to public interest litigation, can an individual file a case saying the fundamental right for me to drive? Because I have got medical clearance, I have a fundamental right to drive.
It is possible, but I think overall, if it is by an association like IEA, the weight would be much more. That's where the public interest is involved.
Correct.
That's what I think.
So Manjari, you are there? Are you hearing? Manjari?
Sir, can I add something?
Yes, sir. I'm
Chairman,
there.
sir.
So
I
Manjari,
think,
1 minute, Patil. Manjari, request for you is to see that the files are moving from one particular department to the other department, and also use your personal contacts for lobbying. The association will do officially, but we want your help.
Sir, the best would be to have a patient who is an affected person to file a PIL. I think that is the best way forward. And first step would be to take personal vehicle in well-controlled persons. I think we just take that subset and then move ahead, rather than trying something which is very dramatic.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is what I was saying.
Patil has something to ask. Patil, you said you want to talk something. Shivraj Patil.
Yes. Sir, actually, while filing the PIL, we have to have some technologies which are supporting us for this case. The technologies like development of software in crash avoidance systems. In the world, there are so many technologies which are already developed. Even for the persons who are going to succumb to the seizures, the moment they show the abnormal, behavior on the wheel, the sensors are so much, adapted to that vehicle that the whole engine automatically stops off. So such type of technologies
we are not talking about how to avoid accident. We are talking about obtaining a driving license.
No. See, sir, to strengthen our point in the Supreme Court or High Court, we have to have a parallel system where it is going to ensure the safety. Safety for the people, public.
Okay.
So we have to go like that.
Yes, sir.
Sir, taking parallel from sleep disorders, which is, people have sleep attacks if they have OSA. They just drop on the asleep on the wheel, and also few cases of narcolepsy, cataplexy. The sleep world has dashboard cameras which pick up the drooping of the eyelid and the pupillary size. So these are already available. Perhaps this is what he means by technology on our side. Maybe put up a proposal where people with epilepsy who are well controlled can have these kind of essential devices in their vehicles, which will pick up that they are going to, just become unconscious because their eyes are moving or they are losing control. So there are also devices which tell us that the vehicle is going to the side, so those devices are also available, and this is being used extensively in sleep disorders world.
Unfortunately,
we take Shivraj Patil's and Manjari's ideas of having a technology to help find out the seizure problem. Now, Satish wants to tell something.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, in epilepsy, we are still far away from that. And we are all working, and everybody is working what precedes epilepsy, what predicts epilepsy. If we know that how we can predict or how we can see the onset of epilepsy, everything can be solved. But unfortunately, we have not reached. The technology is towards that. We are all waiting for that. But we cannot wait for such a long time. And already somebody has risen the question if you put all the technology in the car vehicle will cost you so much that we cannot buy the car. Somebody has already asked, a viewer has made a comment on that. So what is required is, that is a very difficult question to answer. We are talking about personal vehicle, well-controlled epilepsy. That is the first step to start with. And whether can we go ahead with the PIL to get a license for these people, and then the rest of it, we can work as the time passes. That is what my suggestion.
I think
Sir, one observation.
Yeah.
See, in a PIL, you should have, as Jogarao suggested, a robust data. Unfortunately, we don't have retrospective study. We have ignored this driving and epilepsy part completely. But when I see there is one Bangalore traffic surveillance, injury surveillance was done in NIMHANS in 2007, wherein all the hospitals in Bangalore, including 5 major hospitals under BMC, it was the data shows in the injury and mortality, they have not mentioned epilepsy as the cause for any injury or mortality in this huge program.
Yes, I was also
Manjari has also presented one paper on seizure related injury. I didn't see any epilepsy, and only retrospectively Banu has presented one paper comparing the unprovoked and provoked, but it is a very hardly 100. So such retrospective data, if it is available, it will strengthen our hands.
So that data from Bangalore is different entirely. For the head injury, there was no incidence regarding epilepsy. Dr. Gururaj, under epidemiology from NIMHANS, has done this data, and it is widely circulated. It is even gone to the WHO report.
I think we had a very interesting discussion on this, and we thank particularly Mr. Jogarao and SB Patil for their contribution. And I think Indian Epilepsy Association should go ahead taking the cue from these two persons. And I thank all the panelists also. And over to you, Satish.
Yes, thank you very much, sir, Dr. H.V. Srinivas, and all the panelists for a very interesting webinar today on epilepsy and driving. I think always the time is too short. The panelists have tried to answer many of the questions. I'm sure there may be a few more questions which may be there available in the Q&A. And if Manasi can circulate that information to the Bangalore chapter, they can answer them in their emails. That is one of the requests. Please send any of the viewer, if you have a question, please send an email and to the IEA Central Chapter or Manasi. We will get that and answered for you indirectly from the webinar organizers. That is number one. Number two, I should thank Bangalore chapter of the IEA and Dr. H.V. Srinivas, the moderator, for doing a wonderful webinar on epilepsy and driving. It is a lot of information for the public, and I'm sure the law needs to be amended, and also we should take it further from then onward. I should thank Professor Vengamma, the president of the Indian Epilepsy Association, for setting up the context and also briefing us all about the situation at the moment. Manasi from the digital, IA and digital, and also other members of the governing council of the IEA and IES who participated actively, and also very prominent neurologists and also epileptologists. Most important is, I should thank our external panelists, Dr. Jogarao, as well as Shivraj Patil from Bangalore, who spent their time and participated in this. And all the participants who have participated, there were more than about 85 to 100 people were there. And all the participants, I should thank them for their active participation. And we expect your participation in future also. And I also put on this slide about how to become a member of Indian Epilepsy Association. Please note this, and all of you who have participated in today's webinar, and if you are not a member, please, this is a chance for you to become a member. Please become a member of IEA and take active part both in the advocacy as well as in helping the patient with epilepsy or people living with epilepsy. I come to the last one, that is the next month, that is in the present month, that is actually tomorrow, November 1st. We have on November 21st, the next webinar series, and that is the fourth in our best series, and that is on by the Epilepsy Association Secunderabad. Dr. Sita Jayalakshmi and her team is going to talk on children and epilepsy, which is another very, very important talk. And there will be a webinar and a panel discussion. I request all of you to participate actively in large numbers and inform your friends and also relatives or people living with epilepsy or their carer to participate actively. Thank you very much for one and all, and have a nice evening. Thank you.
I thank once again Jogarao and SB Patil for joining us for this interesting session. And thanks SB Patil, even though he's out of Bangalore in Raichur, he took time off from his personal listing and then joined our testing. I thank both of you once again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, Dr. H.U. Srinivas, Dr. Satish Chandra, and all the panel members for having a wonderful webinar on this epilepsy and driving. I think a lot of issues which in our day-to-day practice were discussed, and like what is the suggestion given by these two experts. I think we should try to put a public interest litigation like marriage and epilepsy for epilepsy and driving to help those 75% of the people who could have their own personal driving license. I think we should do something on these directions. Let us hope we'll do some active starting initiation and something good comes out of this. And once again, I thank Bangalore chapter for organizing wonderful third webinar. And we look forward all of you to see on fourth webinar of next month, November 3rd, Sunday, as mentioned by Dr. Satish Chandra. Thank you, sir. Stay safe.